Thrawn's latest triumph still rests newly on his shoulders. He has led the Chiss to victory and brought glory to the House of Myth. But the true threat to the Ascendancy has not yet been extinguished. Their foes do not send threats or ultimatums, do not mass ships on the edge of the chaos. Their weapons come cloaked in smiles and generosity. Gifts offered freely, services granted unconditionally. Across the Ascendancy, seemingly inconsequential events could herald the doom of the Chiss. As Thrawn and the expansionary defense fleet rally to uncover the plot, they discover a chilling truth. Rather than invade Chiss capitals or pillage resources, their enemy strikes at the very foundation of the Ascendancy, seeking to widen the rifts between the 9 ruling families and the 40 great houses below. As rivalry and suspicion sow discord among allies, each warrior must decide what matters most to them: the security of their family or the survival of the Ascendancy itself. Welcome back, everybody, to the Triad of the Forest podcast, a podcast from 3 Puerto Rican friends coming together to do deep dives into Star Wars and other nerd-related media. Today, we continue our book review series with the second installment of the Thrawn Ascendancy trilogy, Greater Good by Timothy Zahn. As you might know, we started our book review series a couple weeks ago with the first part of the Thrawn trilogy, since Greater Good came out fairly recently. We decided it's a good trilogy to begin our book reviews with, and obviously we began with the first being Chaos Rising. The first part of the trilogy, we were pretty enthusiastic about it. Obviously, if you are curious to know our full thoughts about it, go back to go back to our channel and check that video out. It's pretty good. As obviously it's the first one, so there's still some room to learn how to do these. So please bear with us as we kind of find our groove into how we do these book reviews. But going back into a small recap of Chaos Rising, we were pretty enthusiastic about this first part with all the reinvigorated storytelling of fresh settings, new characters, and fresh situations that felt like an exciting opportunity for Thrawn and Star Wars stories alike. But with that, how does this second book, Greater Good, stack up? In a word, it's good. It follows the events of the first book directly, but it doesn't follow the consequences of those events more so than the evolution of said events. One thing that hasn't worked well in previous books is that it overcompensates with Thrawn's presence in the story. While the previous books have had him overly present, this one goes in the opposite direction and has very little of him, or as little as the main characters you can have in your story. As with the Force, balance is key. Greater Good continues Chaos Rising's story, but it shifts focus from the main group of characters, and in a way, it suffers because of it. Chaos Rising, while a great story and a great read, suffered from the heavy lifting it needed to do in terms of world building and character introductions. The complicated nature of character name structures and family hierarchies made the book a bit difficult to follow at times. Greater Good forsakes some of that learning curve established from the previous book and decides to shift focus to a group of new characters. So in a way, the learning curve was reset. While in Chaos, we look at Thrawn, Aralani, and Cheery, and Thalias. In Greater Good, they're glorified extras, with the exception of Thrawn, of course. And we instead focus on Lakinda, Lakfro, and the new Akbui alien villain, Haplift. While this character focus shift is not inherently bad, it was a bit distracting as you keep wanting to know more about the group we spent so much time with before. Plot-wise, as mentioned before, the book picks up from the events of the previous one, but goes in a different direction than one might expect. Having defeated Jiv the Benevolent and his Nakartan destiny, Thrawn runs into a new mystery with a group of Force sensitives that have been displaced from their homeworld and face their demise as their matriarch insists that they must die. This unearths mysteries of what is going on around this group, which ultimately leads to the realization that the worst enemy that Thrawn and the Chiss can face aren't exactly an outside invader, but themselves. It seems that the Akbui Haplift has been orchestrating a plot to take advantage of the petty squabbling of the Chiss families to pit them against themselves, and in a rather twist ending, we discover that Jixtus, the person who had hired him, is in fact a Grisk, the race we heard so much about in previous Thrawn trilogy books, which was the main antagonist. By the end of the book, however, there isn't any resolution, and we culminate in a cliffhanger ending, so we must wait for Lesser Evil to come out, which, spoiler alert, is already out, to come out to see how all these plot threads are tied up. While a trilogy obviously implies that there is an overarching story that connects all books, it feels that we're cheated a bit by the ending of the book without a standalone resolution. This isn't to say that the story isn't engaging and good, on the contrary, it just begs to keep going. Timothy Zahn feels like he's invigorated writing these books without the constraints he had with previous trilogies having to tie into Star Wars Rebels or not being able to explore certain things. These books feel like Zahn writing the character he wants in situations he wants, and it feels great because of it. While some of the details of these worlds and their social structures are hard to follow, it is definitely an engaging and invigorating read that just makes us want to have more Thrawn stories. But stories like this, which aren't restrained by shows or plot points that other creators will explore. Lesser Evil has come, and we can't wait to finish that book and review it so we can complete this trilogy. Timothy Zahn continues to show us why he is one of the best Star Wars writers out there and the true custodian of Thrawn and his legacy. So, what are our final thoughts of Thrawn, Great or Good? If you recall from seeing our previous video, we gave Chaos Rising a 4.5 out of 5 stars, which is a pretty solid review, and it's probably one of the better books in the new canon, at least in our opinion. Great or Good probably does not fare as well as Chaos Rising for some of the reasons mentioned, the narrative that I was going through. Some of the plot threads that aren't resolved are a little distracting. It seemed a little unfocused at times because it felt like it was setting up things as opposed to tying up one story of one book. Uh, but it's all gonna work out better in the long run because it'll all be tied up in Lesser Evil, and it'll make that book the better for it. So, in conclusion, we give it a 4 out of 5. So just zero point 0.5 less than Chaos Rising, which isn't that bad if you think about it. But what did you think? Did you enjoy uh, Greater Good? Are you enjoying this new Thrawn Ascendancy trilogy? Have you had enough of Thrawn? Please let us know in the comments below. We'd love to know your thoughts. But with that, we hope that this review has given you a better idea of what to expect from the book. Hopefully, you pick it up. And like we mentioned, once you do and you read it, let us know in the comments below. But with that, we have been Triad of the Force. If you want to follow us, we're on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Just search at Triad of the Force and you'll find us. And if you want to support the channel, we have a TeePublic store with a bunch of Star Wars inspired shirts and some other nerd related shirts out there. We take requests. So if you want a specific shirt, just leave us a DM and we might fulfill it. But with that, until the next review, we have been Triad of the Force, and may the Force be with you.